This is what happens when someone gets too close to a U.S. aircraft carrier. No flag, no signal, no radio response, just a rusty fishing boat heading straight for 100,000 tons of American steel like it had nothing to lose. At first, no one panicked. In congested waters, especially in strategic zones like the Red Sea or the Strait of Hormuz, small boats are common. But this one felt different. It wasn't following any navigational route. It zigzagged, slowed down, drifted sideways, then sped up again. From the bridge of the USS Gerald R. Ford, it didn't look like a lost fishing vessel, it looked like a test. And what do you do when a small boat, possibly loaded with explosives or spy gear, ignores all warnings? You don't wait to find out. This wasn't a drill. This was real. And in the next 10 minutes, it would become clear how the US Navy reacts when something suspicious gets too close to the most powerful warship on the planet. And just to be clear, that fishing boat chose the worst possible target. Inside the Ford's Combat Information Center, the CIC, the operator didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The screen said it all, a small surface contact, moving erratically, 4,000 yards out and closing in. The AIS, Automatic Identification System, was silent. No name, no flag, no origin. Not unusual. In international waters, many fishing boats don't broadcast. But this one wasn't fishing. It wasn't drifting. It was heading straight for the Ford's port side, slow, but with intent. Bridge, CIC. Contact drifting left. Speed under 5 knots. Erratic maneuvers. The officer of the watch leaned over the chart table. The course made no sense. There was no response on VHF channel 16, the standard frequency for maritime communication. Flight deck, this is the bridge. Prep the Seahawk for takeoff. Set security alert condition 3. That order raised the ship to a higher defensive posture. Not full battle stations, but a serious alert. Below decks, sailors rushed to their posts. Weapons crews checked their mounts. Lookouts trained binoculars on the vessel. The order was clear: watch, but don't trust. The call repeated, calm but firm. Seahawk ready for launch. RHIB teams on standby. In under 2 minutes, they would have a closer look. On deck, no one waited for confirmation. The yellow shirts moved with rehearsed precision. They had done this hundreds of times. The Seahawk's rotors were already spinning, blurring the morning haze into a cyclone. Crew chief secured the door gunner. The pilot nodded, got the go-ahead, and lifted off. Down in the hangar bay, RHIB teams were already boarding. These weren't inflatable dinghies. They were 11-meter high-speed interceptors, armed and crewed by sailors trained to board any vessel, anywhere, in seconds. The USS Ford wasn't going to full combat mode, at least not yet. But its defenses were activating, layer by layer, like a fist slowly closing. Back on the bridge, the captain rechecked the trajectory. Still slow. Still approaching the port side. Intent still unknown. And that was the real danger, because in places like the Red Sea or the Gulf of Oman, this is how things start. First it's a boat. Then, it's an explosion. And if it wasn't a bomb, it could be a scout, a camera, or just a stupid mistake. But until that's certain, you have to be ready for anything. The Seahawk banked hard over the sea, descending to hover just 60 meters above the water. From the gunner's position, the fishing boat looked even more suspicious. 5 men on board, no uniforms, one standing at the bow holding a long object. Still no radio response. No contact, no response. Vessel maintaining course, the Seahawk pilot reported. On the carrier's deck, RHIB teams were ready, waiting for just one order from the captain. But before that, the Navy would give the small boat one last chance. If it didn't take it, things would escalate fast. The Seahawk dropped lower and began circling the boat. From the air, the sea was too calm. The boat rocked with the waves but made no attempt to change course or signal. No gestures, no lights, just 5 men watching in silence. Possible improvised antenna mid-deck. Purpose unknown, came the pilot's voice over the radio. Antennas on a fishing boat? Not impossible, but definitely a red flag. Some smugglers use old radios to communicate at sea. Other times, it's surveillance gear, and in this region, surveillance is rarely innocent. The door gunner trained his weapon on the target but didn't fire. It was a clear warning, not an act of war. Then, one of the men on board stood and slowly raised his hands. The pilot did another pass and spotted a tarp partially pulled aside. Underneath, shiny metal tubes, nothing resembling fishing gear. They could be simple pipes, or something much worse. But it was enough. This wasn't random. This wasn't new. And at this distance, there was no room for assumptions. Deploy RHIBs. Maintain visual contact. Do not fire unless fired upon. From the Ford's starboard side, 2 RHIBs hit the water in seconds. Each carried 6 armed sailors in body armor with rifles ready. They moved fast, cutting across the surface like hunting sharks. No alarms, no sirens, just precision and rising tension. Whatever that boat was, it was about to get a visitor. The boarding team moved fast. The first RHIB closed in, tossed hooks, and within seconds, sailors were aboard. Orders shouted, weapons drawn. The boat's crew, if they were fishermen, were restrained with zip ties and searched on deck. The second team pulled back the tarp. What did they find? Long metal pipes, wires, a satellite phone, spare fuel tanks. Some things might look like fishing gear, but others had no justification. At all. Still no flag. No ID. Whatever that vessel was, it wasn't looking for fish. And now that the Navy had control, they would find out exactly what they were dealing with. Sailors searched the boat thoroughly. One secured the engine controls, another checked the floor for traps or hidden compartments. Every inch treated as a potential threat. Because sometimes, it is. The 5 men were seated at the stern, still restrained, guarded by 2 sailors with M4s. None spoke English, or maybe they didn't want to. Questions could wait. First, the boat had to be secured. One officer opened a storage hatch. Inside, fuel cans, loose wires, cheap radios, and a bundle of documents wrapped in plastic, soaked in salt water and diesel. Another sailor found a battered satellite phone with a cracked screen. Call logs showed an unnamed number. It didn't match anything in the public maritime registry. Then came the surprise: beneath the tarp, near the stern, a wad of cash. Not dollars. Not Yemeni rials. Iranian currency. And that changed everything. Because when you find Iranian money and encrypted radios on a drifting fishing boat near a US carrier group, it's not just an interception. It's a potential high-value intel find. Back in the CIC, boarding reports came in real time. Images streamed from handheld uplinks, gear, documents, faces. Within minutes, intel officers flagged items for deeper analysis. Was this a smuggling op, a recon mission, or something worse? No one knew yet, but the clues kept stacking up. As the RHIB teams prepared to tow the vessel for a full inspection, the Ford never slowed. Jets still launched. Deck ops continued without interruption. Because the Ford doesn't stop for a small boat, it moves with purpose. And if something gets in the way, the Navy handles it and keeps going. Once secured, the boat was prepped for tow and sent to the nearest escort destroyer for a full search. The RHIBs offloaded the detainees and all evidence, fuel records, electronics, and that bundle of Iranian cash, all tagged and sealed. Aboard the USS Gravely, the Navy intel team went to work. The satellite phone underwent digital forensic analysis. Radios were checked for encryption keys or stored frequencies. Documents were translated and cross-referenced with databases. In recent years, U.S. Navy ships have frequently intercepted similar vessels, unflagged, underpowered, lurking near high-value units. Some carried smuggled weapons. Others served as scouts for missile attacks. In 2022, one boat off Oman's coast was found with drone system parts. In 2023, another was stopped in the Strait of Hormuz. Its crew claimed to be lost, but carried encrypted radios and night vision gear. So when this happens, it's not a nuisance, it's a test, a way to see how close you can get before triggering a response from a carrier. A way to measure reaction time, radar range, and helicopter launch windows. That's why even a single small vessel activates the full protocol: visual ID, radio calls, helicopter flybys, RHIB interception, and full boarding. Because if you ignore it, that's when it becomes a real threat. And if this boat was part of something bigger, it wouldn't be the first time. To most people, a lone fishing boat doesn't seem dangerous. But to the US Navy, it's a variable that can't be ignored. Because when you're operating a 100,000-ton aircraft carrier in contested waters, there's no such thing as a harmless unknown. That's why the USS Gerald R Ford never sails alone. Every US carrier is part of a carrier strike group, a mobile fortress made up of destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and support ships. Together, they form a layered defense system designed to detect, deter, and destroy threats before they get close. And it all starts with sensors. From the airborne E-2D Hawkeye to the Spy-1 radars on Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, everything that moves by sea or air is tracked, classified, and assessed. A skiff with no AIS transponder. A course that doesn't match usual patterns. A radio broadcasting on a strange frequency. It all gets logged. But it doesn't stop at detection. There are levels of response. First comes Security Alert Condition 3, an internal state of readiness. Sailors take defensive posts. Comms go encrypted. The flight deck activates for immediate launches. And helicopters like the MH-60 are Seahawk liftoff equipped with surface radar, thermal imaging, and a gunner ready to make decisions in seconds. If the threat gets closer, the response ramps up. RHIBs deploy, fast, agile, with VBSS teams, visit, board, search and seizure, trained for high-risk intercepts. These aren't routine inspections, they're tactical interventions in open water. And that's just the surface. Every escort in the group carries SM-2 interceptors for high-altitude threats, Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, ESSM, for close-in strikes, and CIWS systems like Phalanx, a radar-guided Gatling gun that fires 75 rounds per second. That system doesn't ask questions. And here's what most people don't realize, this happens regularly. In the Gulf of Oman, the Red Sea, and the South China Sea, small unflagged boats approach Navy ships almost every month. Some are just reckless fishermen. Others, spies, smugglers, or floating bombs searching for a vulnerable target. That's why the Navy responds the way it does. It's not paranoia, it's experience. Because hesitation costs. And out here, the difference between a boat full of tuna and one full of explosives is sometimes less than 30 seconds. So when someone says, it was just a fishing boat, the Navy doesn't laugh. They look at each other seriously. When it was all over, the boat was left adrift. Engine off, crew restrained, and all its secrets exposed. The RHIBs returned. The Seahawk came back to base. And the carrier kept launching jets like nothing had happened. That's the difference. A suspicious boat can stir the waters. But a US carrier strike group doesn't even flinch. It doesn't matter if you're a pirate, a spy, a smuggler, or someone who made the worst navigational error of your life. If you approach the most powerful warship in the world without a flag, without ID, and without answering the radio, you will get a response. Sometimes it's just a flyover. Other times, a RHIB by your rail. And occasionally, something much more serious. The real question is, was it just a fishing boat, or a test? You tell us. Was it bad luck, or a worse decision? Or was someone gathering intel for something bigger? And if you made it this far, hit like, subscribe, and share this with anyone who still thinks a fishing boat is no threat. And if you want to go further and support the channel directly, join the fleet. You'll get badges, priority replies, and help us surface more real maritime stories. Click Join on the channel page. Thanks for watching. And next time someone says, it's probably nothing, you'll know, it could be everything.